EQing for intermediates. Yes, today we're talking about EQing once again, the second episode, a follow-up episode, if you will, to the first ever EQ episode I did right here. If you're a beginner, I recommend you watch that one first. But if you want to know a little bit deeper, a little bit more intermediate slash advanced knowledge in FR to help you with your EQ journey, this video is for you. Hey friends, welcome back to Video on Kids Audio. And yes, I've realized I've been away for quite some time. I uploaded 30 videos in a row and I disappeared for around like almost a couple weeks. So what happened to Timmy? The simplest way I could explain my hiatus is just the fact that I kind of burnt out. Yes, after 30 videos in a row, I worked a little bit too hard and I burnt out. And on top of that, there hasn't really been any truly exciting release as well that makes me feel energized or enthused to come back and do reviews. So lately I've been feeling a little bit kind of down, I guess. Burnt out, plus down, plus a little bit bored of kind of the review format. So in light of that, I decided to refocus a bit, plan more tutorials, tips and tricks videos that you guys might find useful in your journey in the audio hobby. Starting with this one, the intermediate EQ tutorial. Now you guys know level 1 basic EQ stuff. We have the auto EQ, we have the bass boost, the treble boost, all that stuff, beginner stuff, all right? We're talking now about more nuanced stuff this time. We're gonna go through each part of the frequency response. I'm going to explain to you what changes when you make changes to those individual parts, and hopefully that helps you have more fun and have more liberty with your EQing and maybe get a more precise sound that you want, knowing all of these information. Now first, let's take a look at the bass segment. Of course, we have the sub bass and the mid bass. The sub bass handles more of that rumbly kind of feeling with the bass. Bass you can feel rather than bass you can hear in a way. Now if you boost the sub bass, of course, you get extra rumbliness, maybe a little bit more of physicality in the bass as well. And if you reduce it or if you roll it off, it does kind of make the bass sound a bit cleaner, but if you roll it off too much, the bass might sound a bit incomplete or one-dimensional, if you will. Now moving on to the mid bass, this area controls a lot of what I would call the bass you can hear. So a lot of the thumpiness you feel from bass instruments, they live in this area. If you boost this area, you're gonna feel the bass instruments being more forward in the mix, and if you reduce this area, the bass instruments will feel a little bit more in the background, leading to a cleaner signature, if you will. Now if you reduce this way too much, you might start to feel the song becoming a bit thin and the bass impact to not be so impactful. And on the opposite end, if you boost it way too much, it might drown out the rest of the song. Now keep in mind that the mid bass and sub bass only contributes to the quantity of the bass, not necessarily the quality of the bass. And quality meaning texture and all that. Those come later on. And another thing that mid bass contributes to is an overall sense of note weight. And alongside the mid bass, the lower mid range also contributes to note weight as well. The more you have in the mid bass and the lower mid range area, the more note weight or the heavier the notes come across and also the warmer the sound is. Now speaking of lower mid-range, besides its effect on note weight and also the warmth, it also has an effect on how forward some instruments come across, including some vocalists and some lower range instruments. If you boost the lower mid-range, again, you do get the extra warmth, you do get the extra note weight. Some vocalists come across a bit more forward, maybe a bit more rich, if you will, instruments as well. If you reduce the lower mid-range, you do get a cleaner sound, but it does run the risk of male vocals and some instruments coming across a bit thin or a bit too far in the background if you reduce that area too much. Another thing to note about the lower mid-range is from 500 Hz to 1000 Hz. This area is an area where I don't recommend anyone touch with EQ unless you know what you're doing, because stuff sounds weird very quickly. If you reduce this area too much, you're gonna end up maybe with a slightly bit more V-shaped kind of sound where the mid-range just sounds a bit hollow. If you boost it too much, you're going to introduce nasally or honky kind of sound, and it doesn't even have to be too much of a boost to introduce those elements. Maybe like a 1 or 2 dB boost can significantly change how mid-range instruments sound. So be kind of careful when you're playing around with the 500 Hz to 1 kHz area. Moving on, we have the upper mid-range now. A lot of you guys who love K-pop, J-pop, female vocals, weeb soundtracks, you guys love this area. You guys want a lot of it because you guys want female vocals to sound very lively and energetic and kind of in your face in a way. Some of you guys even like the shoutiness that comes with having too much upper mid-range. I don't like shoutiness, so I don't like to have way too much here. But yes, that is what happens if you boost up this area too much. Now, if you reduce this area, you might feel like the mid-range instruments are a bit more relaxing, if you will. If you reduce it way too far, they start to become muffled and hidden in the mix. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that the upper mid-range and the lower treble area contributes a lot to the tactility of bass instruments, to incisiveness in instruments in general, and also clarity as well. So if you boost the upper mid-range or the lower treble area, you will get extra sense of clarity, incisiveness, and texture. But do be careful not to boost these area way too much because it does change a lot about your mix. It might become shouty or maybe too energetic or harsh. The timbre might sound off. And on the opposite end, if you reduce this area, you might get, again, a more relaxing sound, a more smooth over instruments, if you will. They won't sound as tactile. And if you reduce this area way too much, instruments might start to sound muffled, blunted, or lacking definition. Now, speaking of the lower treble and the treble as a whole, this area contributes a lot to timbre as well as all the other stuff, incisiveness, texture, that I already talked about. Timbre of vocals and instruments live mainly here in the upper ranges of the upper mid-range all the way down to 20 kHz. So manipulating this area changes how natural the decay of instruments will sound. If you have too much in the treble area, the decay might not sound as natural. You might get some harshness, but at the same time, you will get extra bit of details, if you will, some breathiness, some more shimmer and shine in instruments. It really depends on what you like here. If you reduce it way too much, the timbre might sound like it roll off very early. Instruments and vocals might start to sound incomplete, low quality in a way, and maybe even makes you feel like you have some kind of hearing loss if you really reduce this area. But yeah, this area is probably the most subjective area and people's tastes vary quite a lot, even more so than in the bass, I would say. At first, when I started in this hobby, I thought the bass area would be the widest kind of margin for preferences, but no, it's actually in the treble and how people like their treble done. So do play around with this area if you feel like the timbre coming out of your IEMs is not to your liking. Now, there is one thing to note here is that if you have an IEM that has a lot of peaks in the lower treble, upper treble area, or a lot of dips, it will, number one, hurt the overall naturalness of timbre, but at the same time, number two, there's nothing you can do to fix it. To fix peaks and dips, you would have to know exactly where those peaks and dips are, which you can't really determine by reading graph. Because after 4K Hertz, the graph are unreliable. And yes, the 5128 graph is more accurate than the 711 graph, but it's kind of just showcasing the population average, if you will. And this area in particular, the lower treble and upper treble, is the most different between ear to ear. So it's very individualistic, you can say. So in order to find out your dips and peaks, it's gonna be difficult. You kind of have to use tone generator to try to determine that. And also it would help as well if you have your own coupler and you get to measure and find out what your own insertion depth is with the ear tips that you're using. And even if you do all of that, the certainty is just okay. You're never really going to get a precise look of what this area looks like for your own ear. So it's a lot of guesswork. But there is a way around this in a way, or a small remedy, if you will, is to pick an IEM that doesn't have a lot of peaks or dips. So pick IEMs that have relatively smooth treble response as your template for EQing. That would help a bit. And the last tip I'm going to share with you guys today is the fact that FR is a balancing scale. For example, if you feel like you need more bass, a lot of people would just boost the bass up, right? But you can get more bass from just reducing the other parts, like reducing the upper mid-range, reducing the treble. It tips the scale of the frequency response towards being heavier in the bass. So you kind of have to figure out on your own, in a way, exactly what you want to do with your EQ. Let's say, for example, you have an IEM that's already fairly balanced and you just want a bit of more bass, then yes, maybe a bass boost is the right call. But if you do want more bass, but you also notice that your IEM sounds a bit shouty, maybe the vocals are a bit too forward, then maybe instead of boosting the bass, you reduce the upper mid-range. That might be the better call. But yes, just to wrap it up and not make this video way too long, FR is a balancing act. You boost an area, you're going to hear less of the areas you didn't boost. Alright, that is it for this video today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if that video was helpful. Is there any other information that I've missed? Leave those down in the comment section below and maybe I'll do a part 3 of this EQ series, I guess. And with all that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out and bye. Oh, and also, if you guys want me to do any more other tutorials, leave those down in the comment section as well.